What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Thought I would do something a little bit different today than what I typically do, and that is do a Q&A. So it's been a while since I've spoken to you guys in this format. I mean, I've been doing it every single week in the Mars High Club, but I thought I would bring this to a more public forum today on my YouTube channel and on my X, and just do a live run through. So talk about the market, talk about what I'm seeing, also answer some questions. I do kind of miss this because I do my daily updates every single day where I just basically, give you guys my market thoughts and, go through narratives, and I have my other narrative-based videos, mindset videos, etc. But I wanted to do something live today and just answer your questions and interact, see what's on your mind. If you want to ask me about any coins, you can ask me about coins. We can run through the market. So yeah, just want to say what's up to everyone. What's up? What's up to you? It's a nasty time. Yes, the markets are a bit nasty. I want to talk about what I think happens from here today, and also going to go through and chart a bunch of alts. We're seeing lower lows on a few altcoins. So just looking at Bitcoin for a second, looking at the weekly right now, there is this gap. Now, I don't want you to focus too much on this lower level at 92, but the important thing to keep in mind is that there's still a little bit of support in the 94K region. I know we're right at the bottom of this trend, but technically there is this cluster here that's acting as final support. So you'd want to see a reaction here pretty soon. We had a reaction yesterday, but we've started to retest the lows of this range. So keep your eye on that zone to see if we can potentially close higher. Technically, US session, it's not a market trading day today, but US Sunday hasn't actually closed yet, so we haven't had a candle close below. If we do close below, this could be confirmation of a breakdown. However, Bitcoin has done this in the past where it will break down and then reclaim on the Monday, Tuesday. So we'll unpack whether I think that could happen earlier in the week later today, but it's not technically a breakdown here. This is actually key support for Bitcoin at 94 to 96K, this whole 95K region. Then if you want to draw it in as well, there's another key level of support. These are the wick lows of November and December 24 in the 91 to 92K region as well. So in this zone, there is a bit of support. Below that, I mean, your next, and I'm not trying to freak anyone out, I'm just keeping it 100 with you guys. Your next really, really structural support. I mean, there is a cluster in here around the 80K zone, 85K. But it's back down in this zone here that we tagged. So I don't think we're going to have a full retrace down to this zone. I just really don't feel like that at the moment. I think there's quite a lot of support here and that we should start to see a bit of a reaction soon for a relief bounce. But we can unpack today, some of the reasons why the market looks like this and the structural reasons behind things. I did a video a few days ago where I said that I didn't think the bull run was over. And from a macro perspective, I still don't think it is. So you might be looking at me right now and saying, look, Miles, we've had a technical trigger, the bull run should be over. This is a breakdown. This is the first time we've broken down this cycle. Now, on the 50-day MA, that is one way to look at it, but I'm looking at more of a macro perspective that, yes, the Bitcoin narrative is clearly saturated for now. And yes, there's probably going to be a multi-week or multi-month period of downways chop to sideways action that will eventually result in price consolidation. But from a macro perspective, I'm looking at the Bitcoin bull market as a multi-year thing. I don't think we're in a 4-year cycle anymore, by the way, because Bitcoin has become a macro asset. I still think there are triggers for equities to go higher in 2026, potentially beyond until we see a bigger correction. Because, I mean, we can go maybe further into this later, but there's a big AI arms race at the moment, America versus China, and it would just not make sense from a competitive point of view for the US government to significantly contract monetary supply in an environment like this. In fact, Trump knows what he needs to do is continue to pump the gas and continue to prop up markets and try and basically outpace the debt and try and achieve some technological breakthrough and competitive advantage in the AI arena. And obviously, we've started to see that searches for AI bubble have gone up. You can actually see on Kalshi searches for AI bubble hit all-time highs. But when this happens, it actually makes me convinced maybe the top isn't in for AI. Because when the masses start to believe, it's an AI bubble, and you saw, Burry shorting the AI stocks, it makes me think that the bubble isn't over, and bubbles can get a lot bigger before they pop. So I still think balance of probabilities, and if you look at equities, we're clearly in an uptrend. We continue to go higher in equities. I mean, how can you just be totally bearish on the business cycle and market structure looking at this? You have to follow the trend, and equities trend is up. Now you can say, okay, Bitcoin and alts are down. That is true, but eventually Bitcoin is a liquidity sponge. It will benefit from equities going higher. It's just decorrelated because of Bitcoin specific factors. The DAT's starting to sell off, a little bit of pressure on that narrative. Of course, we had the DATs powering the entire run up. Now we are seeing the unwinding of the treasury bid, not materially unwinding in terms of, large amounts of selling. There's only been small amounts, but in terms of the fact that that was a narrative that was front run in the market, now it's not being front run anymore. And you also have that combined with OG selling retail ETF outflows for Bitcoin as well. So there's been, material reasons for people to take profits on Bitcoin. And that's okay. That's resulted in a bit of weakness, but I'm thinking from a macro perspective. So yeah, I'm happy to have a debate with anyone today. If they have reasons why they think it's over and Bitcoin's going to 60, 70K, happy to have that debate. But for me, I actually get very interested here from a long-term perspective to ladder in on Bitcoin. And that's actually a process that I started on Friday. I did a video on Friday updating you guys. And I said that I was starting to ladder into Bitcoin. I also took, you can see in my Discord here, Mars High Club, you can see that I took a perp long on ZEC. We had some nice bounces across the market, close out half of these positions, and still riding a ZEC position. I think it's up now 111%. So this one's been an outlier. Just shows like if you're going to long, like always try and long strength. So privacy right now is a big narrative. We're going to get into that today. I think that is definitely somewhere you can look if you want to outperform the market. But overall, I have started to add to my Bitcoin position. Another thing, not financial advice, of course, do your own research. MicroStrategy. I know this is kind of extremely reflexive off the back of Bitcoin. So when Bitcoin goes up, it tends to go up more. When Bitcoin goes down, it tends to go down more. But I think this is also becoming an interesting DCA into a key support level. Now, I wouldn't hold MicroStrategy as a replacement for Bitcoin over a 5-year period because it has additional tail risk that Bitcoin doesn't have. But I think over a shorter term period, like if your time horizon's 1 year, there should be more reflexivity to the upside. Because essentially, the way to think about holding MicroStrategy is you're holding a levered bet on Bitcoin without having to take on leverage, without having to take on, paying funding and exchange risk and Oracle risk that we've seen, API risk with the exchanges recently. It's essentially a levered bet on Bitcoin. And MicroStrategy, despite popular belief and despite all the rumors and everything people are saying about Saylor, they can't go bust. Even if Bitcoin, they can go bust over a 10-year period. They can't go bust if Bitcoin drops. So if Bitcoin goes down 70%, most of their loan repayments are in 4 years' time. It's averaged out over a span of 4.8 years. So the only thing that could really put real significant pressure on MicroStrategy is Bitcoin trading at like 30, 40K for like 5 years. Even then, they could restructure the debt, push it out into the longer term, wait for a recovery, and then, sell off. So that you can't get margin called on MicroStrategy, unlike the fact you can get obviously margin called on a 3x Bitcoin long. So as a leverage alternative to the market, I prefer MicroStrategy. It's kind of like, a lot of people play altcoins to get a beta to Bitcoin, right? MicroStrategy is my beta to Bitcoin without having to go straight into alts because they're structurally different markets right now. But maybe we can speak about that a little bit later. Just checking out that the stream is live on X. I believe that we are. Nice. Cool. I see people are starting to join. All right. Today is going to be a Q&A though, so I won't ramble too much. Of course, I'm going to update you and we can talk about stuff, but yeah, let's go through things. Henrik Zeberg thinks there's going to be another leg up. He's actually been liking and commenting on my posts recently about buying the dip. So I assume he's in that camp. Obviously he thinks that, the bubble's going to burst at some point, but I think that's going to happen next year. And I think he would agree. Clearly we've seen, RSI actually decreasing for Bitcoin and price reactions have been decreasing as this cycle has progressed. So we've seen relative strength weaken, but I still think there's going to be another leg on Bitcoin at some point. And Henrik says the same thing. I don't speak, German, unfortunately. Even though my last name's Deutscher, I don't actually speak German. Are you adding alt, Sol, ETH, pump? So this is the time, I think, if you take a long-term view. So firstly, you got to decide, do you think the bull run's over or not? If you think it's over, clearly you don't want to be positioning aggressively in long-term positions right now. If you don't think it's over, if you still think the market has upside over the next year, then you can start to strategically add to alt positions that you like. For example, you could add some Sol if you like Sol. You could add some ETH if you like ETH. The only thing you have to be prepared with is to hold these positions for the entirety of your thesis. You're not adding positions here to swing trade. You're not adding positions here to hold super long term. You're adding positions here over the assumption that this is a blip in a broader macro bull market for Bitcoin, and some of the strong alts should theoretically recover more aggressively than Bitcoin when it recovers. However, what I don't feel comfortable doing right now is going super down the risk curve. And that's why over the past 3 days, the only thing I've added is ZEC on the dip. It's already bouncing quite nicely. MicroStrategy, because it's like a lever bet on Bitcoin and Bitcoin itself. I haven't gone further down the risk curve because what I want to see is Bitcoin put in a floor. The thing that people have to realize is that dominance is probably going to increase as Bitcoin recovers. So typically when Bitcoin puts in these bottoms, and I'll show you some historical examples of this, when Bitcoin puts in its lows, like in 2022, for example, Bitcoin was the fastest horse out of the gate before we started to see interest for alts come back again. It also happened in December last year when the altcoin market crashed. Bitcoin was the fastest horse out of the gate before. So it was the fastest horse this entire leg before we saw alts started to run. So I think it's similar now. We've put in a local floor. I think Bitcoin needs to be one of the fastest horses again to get liquidity back into the market and interest back into the market before we go back into alts. And what this means is, yes, you can add things strategically to your longer term positions, but there's no rush to DCA heavily into alts now when you'll be able to make a rotation once Bitcoin's put in a bottom. Like I've said this a lot in my group, Mars High Club. I prefer almost paying the 10% tax to buy on confirmation than trying to catch a falling knife in the market. The only assets that I'm happy to catch a falling knife on are the assets that I think are going to be materially higher in multiple years' time. And the confidence that I have in the majority of the altcoin market that will be the case is quite low. There are a few assets, like Bitcoin's definitely one of those assets. And there are some other plays that I think have a decent chance. We'll talk about privacy later today. I think that's one of those sectors. But a lot of the altcoins are more reflexive bets on the market. So these are great things to play when momentum is in your favor, and they become reflexively bad things to play when momentum is against you. So you just have to understand where we are in the cycle. If we're in a lights on period, you want to be more aggressive altcoins. When you're in a risk off period, you want to be a little more defensive and looking to add to long-term positions. And you can cycle as the market starts to recover your long-term positions into shorter-term trades to get higher beta exposure to the market when the market is right. But that does not really involve catching a knife, in my opinion. Redline says this is all straight market manipulation, liquidity sweep, the long till everyone calls for the bear market. Yeah, I mean, this market manipulation, whatever you want to call it, reflexive trade, things eventually, end up. I mean, for Bitcoin, it's been in an uptrend since 2022. Things eventually end up turning. And structurally, I know this looks really bearish if you start to look at levels, but this doesn't look broken to me. Now, the shitty thing is, I guess it's technically not broken until you close a lower low under 77. Once again, I don't think we get there, but this does still look like a normal dip. I mean, 26%. The last dip was 32%, actually bigger. The dip before that was 33%. This is Bitcoin has 30% bull market dips. And every single time, people thought the bull market was over. Back in 2024, mid-year, I don't know if you remember this period. Everyone was depressed. Everyone said the bull market was over. When Bitcoin dipped in January 25, after Trump's inauguration, people said the bull market was over. And now people are saying here in November, the bull market is over again. So I understand altcoins are a different story. It's definitely nuanced because they are more reliant on flows than ever, rather than, sector-wide liquidity flow. We haven't seen that really this cycle since, the meme stuff in 2024. But on Bitcoin, this is still a normal drawdown. Christian says, can I DCA on my 6-coin portfolio, which is 40% down? Look, if you think, firstly, you got to make sure you have high conviction in those altcoins. If you have high conviction in those altcoins and you think that they'll be higher in a year's time, then you can DCA. But you also want risk parameters or invalidations to protect capital if we're wrong, because we can't operate in absolutes. There's a chance, it's never absolutes. There's a chance the bull market's over. I think the chance is less than 50%, which is why I'm still taking the bet on buying. If I was the other way around, I would be net selling. I'm still buying. So that's because I don't think the bull market's over. But that's the first decision you have to make. Then you have to work out whether you have conviction in those alts. Then you have to work out what's your max drawdown if the other probability comes true. Like at this stage in the cycle, you shouldn't be holding things that you're not willing to hold long term. And if you are holding short-term structural trades, that's okay. Just make sure that certain market structures or triggers of market structure will invalidate either your entire position or partially invalidate your position. There's a lot of questions. So All right, let's talk about Zcash. What do you think of Zcash? Obviously, this is a hot narrative, and I also want to make sure that my stream is pinned on X. So, how do I actually do this? I have to pin, and let me actually quote tweet to live now answering your questions. Let's just get this posted. Nice. Okay. So Zcash. All right, privacy is a very interesting narrative. This chart's insane. But all right, basically what's happening is, I mean, privacy has been on the cards in crypto for years, by the way. Like ZK has been the way that Vitalik has wanted to scale Ethereum for quite some time. So it's always been, you know, on the cards and on the roadmap. But what's happened in recent times is the institutional interest of crypto has absolutely skyrocketed. So demand for institutions tokenizing assets, so tokenizing RWAs, bringing bonds, gold, etc., onto the blockchain has gone through the roof. And we've seen significant interest from banks like Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, you know, BNP Paribas, and these kind of funds and banks to get involved in crypto. But the issue is, the current way that crypto is set up with these retail chains like Solana, with Ethereum, they're not compliant enough. They're too transparent, and it doesn't allow for privacy. And the problem is, when you have institutions moving around big sums of money, they don't want transparency. Their clients actually value anonymity and privacy and compliance. And in order to do that, you need to utilize certain proofs, and ZK proofs are the best that we've got in the market in terms of a technological solution at the moment, to facilitate private transactions. That is why privacy is now bigger than ever. That's also coming at a time when the European Union is now talking about putting cash limits on people. It's talking about people having to now dox how much Bitcoin they own and report these wallets to the government. We're now seeing similar things over cash transactions in Britain. Like, things are starting to seem a little bit draconian. And that may be the future we're heading into with CBDCs and more surveillance and control. And the government wants to do this in order to get more control. So privacy is a big narrative. I'm not saying that Zcash or any Monero or any other coin is going to be the ultimate solution to all of this. Clearly not. Governments have more power than that. But what it will be is a big talking point heading into the next few years. And we know crypto thrives off narratives. So you're getting a period in time where the technological innovations are now combining with the legislation and the narrative mindset that privacy has. And then on the Zcash side, it's coming at an interesting moment, actually, because Bitcoin is probably the most centralized it's ever been. I mean, institutions own, I think, 6-7%, alongside the ETFs. Obviously, even, you know, MicroStrategy owns a lot of Bitcoin. So between the treasury companies, the ETFs, the government, they own like over 10% of Bitcoin. It's becoming more centralized, more controlled. BlackRock's now involved. It's an institutionalized coin, and it's kind of straying away from Satoshi's vision a little bit. Actually, in 2010, there was a Satoshi quote that talked about the fact that that Bitcoin's biggest strength wasn't privacy. I'm not talking verbatim here. I'm kind of paraphrasing. Bitcoin's biggest strength isn't privacy. He actually said that there would probably be a better solution in the future for privacy with an asset like Bitcoin. And that's kind of how Zcash came to be a few years later. It was basically a fork of Bitcoin that took the privacy preserving element. It doesn't do privacy through obfuscation like Monero. It does privacy through selection through ZK snarks. And that's how it's able to hide certain transactions. It has separate pools. It has transparent pools and wallet addresses, and then it has private pools, and that allows you to transact and, you know, send payments while keeping your funds anonymous. So there's kind of been a bit of a divide in Bitcoin maxis recently, that, you know, the tech that we fell in love with, like the cypherpunk attitude, is like, you know, privacy, sovereignty, etc. Bitcoin's stemming away from that now with the institutional interest, which is a great thing for price and a great thing for adoption, and, you know, a good thing for the hash rate and all of this stuff, but maybe not a great thing for the core principles of Bitcoin. And that's why we're seeing a movement at the moment towards Zcash, because it's like, this is, you know, this has elements that are more in line with their original vision, and heading into this new society has elements that are going to be needed with how the future of finance is developing, and, you know, all these you know, measures coming out, or some of the rumors from the government side. So you know, you've seen the Winklevoss twins now starting to publicly support Zcash again, and accumulate more Zcash. So it's become a bit of an institutional topic now. And I think that's why you're seeing such relentless bidding. And every time price slams down, clearly there's a lot of buyers that want to step in and buy more. Look, because a lot of people are going to ask, is it too late to buy now? I don't think anything that, if you want to hold an asset long term, you probably don't want to buy into big pumps. Like, generally speaking, you want to buy in on big dips if you want to hold an asset long term. What I personally did, and first you got to work out whether you want to hold long term. Do your research, because you don't want to, convince yourself that you love Zcash and it's the future of finance and the narrative's great when price is up, and then like, okay, let's say it comes down like this and does this, all of a sudden you're bearish now, but wait, it was supposed to be a 1 year hold. So you have to work out whether you're actually bullish on this narrative and whether you agree of like Zcash being the private Bitcoin. And then if you do agree with it, what percentage of Bitcoin's market cap should that be assigned to? I mean, assuming 100K Bitcoin to keep math easy, 10% would be a 10K Zcash. It's over at 15x, around that. 5% would be a 5K Zcash. Only 1% would be a 1K Zcash. 0.1% would be $100 Zcash. So you have to work out what percentage of Bitcoin's market cap should the private Bitcoin be assigned, and how much potential does that have? I mean, we've seen a lot of the metric traction increasing recently. So you've seen private pooled ZEC tokens starting to increase significantly. I think to over 5 million tokens. So that's a new milestone. So we're actually seeing traction on the metric side. But in terms of whether price is going to continue to follow, you need to work that out for yourself. If you're buying short term, that's different. You want to use short term parameters for that. And one of the best indicators that I've been using recently is the money noodle. And this is actually what helped me trigger my entry the other day, one of the tags of this zone, and that helped me get this trade, which I'm still open, by the way. What I'm thinking of doing is closing the 3x trade, because I'm now starting to pay aggressive funding on this, and roll it into a spot long-term position on Zcash. So I bought a small long-term position the other day, but it's very small size. This is now becoming a bigger position. I'm considering just rolling this into spot and just holding it. But I might look to TP half now, roll half into spot, and then wait for another dip and then roll another half in. Like, in terms of whether I'm taking the bet, I want to have this in my long-term portfolio. But I also don't want to ape, because it's run up a lot. So luckily I was able to hit this perp long, but I'm not going to go crazy with aping at 720. But I think the narrative's strong, and I actually think the opportunity is bigger than just Zcash. Now, obviously, I think Starknet's going crazy today. I actually posted this in the Discord as well. Yeah, I talked about Starknet, so you can see in my coin updates channel. I did a post the other day about Starknet reclaiming 0.17 and how that could be an opportunity. I also talked about ZK and NIA, which was about to break out. I wonder if NIA has broken out yet. I know Starknet has. NIA rejected, so no confirmed trade on that yet. On Starknet, we had the break above, and it actually gave us a pretty clean entry signal. So you see it was pressing up against resistance. You have the breakout. You have the very clean retest in here. Perfect retest. Let's get rid of these so you can see cleaner. And we had a move up, leg down for your second fill if you didn't get one already, and now we're forming another flag. So this could potentially keep running. In terms of trading it now, it's beautiful, because whenever you have a breakout of a key high time frame level, the best way to play it technically is to do rally-based rally. So you want to confirm on a high time frame that we're broken out of a key level, Starknet has. Then you want to look at these bases and you want to pivot off them. So you have your flags that start to form, essentially, as you can see here. So you can basically play these consolidation patterns to the upside, accumulate at the lows and on the breakouts. You can even split 50-50. So confirm breakout, leg to the upside, or sweep, confirm breakout, 50% fill, 50% fill, inval below. And because you got the noodle here, you can actually pivot off the noodle. So if you're building a position on the hourly, you can inval below a close on the noodle, because we're respecting. You can see price actually respected on the way down, and then we flipped, and then we've actually had respect on the way up. So this is actually a super clean one to trade. You could wait for an H1 noodle retest, but you can play rally-based rally with noodle inval, or you can play, or you can just long the noodle on the way up. That's the way to like keep riding longs whilst managing positions as price goes up. But that's a pretty active way of trading. That's just ensuring that your risk management's intact. If you have a midterm to a long-term thesis on this coin, then your strategy will be different. And if you go into the weekly chart, which would be really long-term strategy, then you're probably like, okay, we're only just breaking out now. This could be great. Of course, you haven't even had a weekly close yet. We're about to get one. But before you get too excited, just keep in mind there's also resistance in this zone. So if that's your next target at 30 cents, I think going onto the hourly and playing the structure, the uptrend structure is a good way to go. And that's how I'll play breakouts in general. And if you look at Bitcoin, it's been the same thing. If you go onto the H4 and go into the prior breakout of 100K, it's basically been the same thing for Bitcoin. When it broke out of 100, it did rally base rally here, and on the higher time frames as well, on the daily. Try to make this more clear. Where is the 100K break? I want to see the 100K break. Basically, the entire way up is how Bitcoin played the trend. So all the way from the lows, 2023, it would basically rally, form a base, rally, form a base, rally, form a base, rally, form a base. That extended for a period of time, so you would have been stopped out there. And then it did it again. Rally, base, rally, longer base, distribution, breakout again. So these are how uptrends typically look. The patterns are similar across pretty much every coin in terms of playing uptrends. It was very clear on Bitcoin. And you actually probably wouldn't have gotten stopped out here because you would have had your first entry here and your stop below. So you can just keep riding it up. DCA on the way out. That's how to ride like 100. That's how you basically could have rode 100 to 124. I actually did that, but I didn't sell the Pico top. My inval on my trades came a bit later. Lewis says, I'm bullish on USDT. We're clearly going into a bear market, I think. I don't think we're clearly going into a bear market. And here's the other thing. Like, we are at a support level right now. If you were bullish up until last week and you're only now flipping bearish, that is also a problem. Because A, we're now heading into support. B, Bitcoin's been exhausted for quite some time. And I haven't been hiding this on the channel. Like, we've been talking about this. Like, you had your first major breakdown. So we went from 125, we went all the way to 104. I said, remember, if you've been following the YouTube channel, I said that 116 was the level to get up against. That was the level we needed to reclaim. We rejected off that level. We made lower lows. Then we swept range low. Then I said, okay, it's 108K is sell the news unless we flip. We went up, we tested 108, we rejected again. So this has been downwards distribution since 120. I actually have my Discord post here where I said this back in the day. Anyway, I said it. Just trying to find it. I post a lot in this channel. Yeah, here. I said, to be blunt, we're in a downtrend, more interested in being a net seller around 108K unless we flip above. So basically taking the trend for the trend. You never want to fight against the trend. Like, it's very clear that we're in a structural downtrend on Bitcoin. You can see it here. So if you're in a downtrend, you have to fade the mindset, and same as an uptrend, you have to fade until proven otherwise. So you're going to fade every rally until proven otherwise. Fade, 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 fade until you reclaim structure. And it's the same in a bull trend. You want to fade every dip until proven otherwise. So fade this dip, fade this dip, fade this dip until you break structure. We didn't actually break structure there. Now, you might say, okay, but why are you saying the bull market's still going then? If you're saying we're in a downtrend, well, it's all about your time frame. This is on the 4 hourly. But if we go into the weekly time frame, what did I just say? Fade every dip until proven otherwise. Fade, fade, fade. And you would have made a lot of money actually buying those dips. The question is, what does until proven otherwise mean? Well, honestly, otherwise on Bitcoin is in this region here. This would be like full distribution. So if you're managing short-term positions, yes, there's been many exit triggers over the last few weeks. If you're managing long-term positions, this isn't a zone to suddenly go bearish. This is actually a zone to accumulate. So I think, to answer your question, Lewis, are we going into a bear market? Well, we're already in one, and we have been for quite some time on the low time frames. But in terms of bear market, in terms of the overall cycle, we are not in one from a Bitcoin perspective. For altcoins, yes, I mean, alts are in a bear market, but we're looking at equities and Bitcoin here because we know the altcoin game has changed. If you've been watching my content for pretty much the whole year, and especially over the past few months, we've talked about how the market now is structurally different from how it used to be. And that's just something we need to adapt to. And I've given, a lot of advice on this, but just a few small things. Hold less altcoins, only hold things, you're really bullish on long term. 2, only really focus on flows. So is there net demand for a coin? So is there more buying than there is selling? 3, if you are going to buy an altcoin, always have an invalidation for that coin. And yeah, I think that's basically it. I mean, there's other stuff as well, but I think those are the main things. What do you think of PIEVERSE right now? Yeah, this just launched. This is an X402 payment protocol. It's like the leading agent play on BNB. It's at 313. You know what the thing is with new launches for me? So I like this fundamentally. And I actually invested in it. But not liquid, earlier investor in one of the rounds. I'm holding my position for now. I don't see a reason to get into the liquid market just because with new launches, you want to see where they settle. Like even Canton Network, this is a project that I'm bullish on fundamentally. They have Goldman Sachs, they have Deutsche Bank, they have all of these massive backers and actually the most RWAs of any chain over 4 trillion in TVL. But I need to see where it settles from a technical perspective because without historic data in a market like this, you have no invalidation level. And yeah, you can keep catching a knife. So, you can catch a knife at these lows, but then, you're making new lows and you're catching a knife again. And then potentially, I'm not saying Canton's going to bleed out, but, potentially it could. A lot of new launches have gone down and then you're catching a knife again. What you're often better off doing is waiting for an uptrend to start to establish and start waiting for relative strength and then get back in on reclaims and then have your inval below. That way you're playing into momentum. And I think most people in the market in general would be better off playing into momentum than trying to chase laggards. So there's this classic saying in markets like add to your winners, cut your losers. I think that's generally true. Like a better move right now, in my opinion, would be to cut. And this sounds like you're chasing a pump, but if you want to stay true to the saying, cutting crap and consolidating into ZEC will probably make you more money. For example, I'm not saying do that because your portfolio and your beliefs and everything is going to dictate what you do. But as a rule of thumb, that would be correct right now. So that's the mindset you've got to get into. And it doesn't mean sell everything to chase pumps. It just means you want to generally consolidate into strong things and continue to trim things that are weak. On pumps, of course. You don't need to do it at Pico lows. Whenever there's like a bounce on something you don't like, just use it to flush out of your portfolio and add something that you do like. I think a good rule in the market right now is the 80-20 rule. So 80% of your capital dedicated towards long-term assets and then 20% of your capital dedicated to short-term trading and narrative trading. Because the reality is there's still lots of opportunity, narrative trading in this market. There's still lots of opportunity in the short-term rotations and the trades. I mean, even the other day, I was able to get some nice bounces on coins. This is a 3x trade. So, pretty decent for a 3x trade. There are always opportunities. Like even when Asta came along, when Launchcoin came along, earlier in the year when Trump came along, like the night before any of those events happened, I had no idea I was about to make crazy money. And they came out of nowhere. So you don't know when that opportunity is going to be in crypto. And that's why I always play around with that 20% of my portfolio to stay active and stay in the game. And then I have my 80% that is, a bit slower to compound, that I manage a bit more carefully. And that's my long-term stack. So I think having that barbell of long-term and short-term is good because it really, it really forces you to limit the damage on potential short-term trades going awry, but it keeps you in the game longer term. And we know surviving's key. Like a lot of people are getting bored, capitulating and dropping out of the market right now. Look, I get it. It's a tough market. It's a fucking tough market. and it's tough to stay mentally in the game. But those who did it through 2022 will know how much this game rewards you if you can stay in the game. And I think just to expand on that, like staying in the game is not just staying trading or staying investing. It's actually continuing to look at how to leverage your position in the space. Like I remember in 2022, I was making threads every day. I was making videos every day. Everyone else was capitulating. Everyone else was getting bored. Everyone else hated crypto. And I was still doing it every day, and most creators dropped off. And by the time the bull market came back around, I had a stronger network, I had more followers, I had more influence, and that, was able to help me get a leg up during the next period of the market. Whereas the people that weren't creating content throughout that period were forced to scramble and like start creating it again later on. So I was able to give myself an advantage through grinding throughout the bear. And I'm not saying you need to become a content creator. Obviously, it's advantageous with how the ICO model is now in terms of getting approvals and with, ICM and internet capital markets and all this sort of stuff. So I'm not saying you have to do it, but it is something that you can consider. But beyond that, I think more importantly, during the down periods, try and build your network, because a lot of like-minded people aren't going to be as busy now. When the market's crazy, everyone's frantic, and people aren't really open to new ideas. They're too busy managing their portfolios. Like right now, I'm even finding people are willing to try new stuff. They're willing to, if they weren't doing public speaking, they're now potentially willing to do it. If they weren't, willing to take research into account, now they are. If they weren't willing to have a conversation, now they have more time. So you can actually use this to build your network, whether it be, a retail network or a more advanced network or a BD network if you're in that side of the industry, and use this period to get a leg up on the game, because there's less attention dilution. So whether it's content, whether it's networking, or whether it's even, if you're introverted and you don't want to do any of this, sure, just refine your system. Learn how to use AI during this period. Something I've been doing is actually building out a bunch of custom Claude skills for me to be able to research AI. So I have my crypto research assistant skill. Going to be posting this in the Discord soon. I have my crypto research assistant file. And we're continuing to iterate on these because, yeah, the market's slow. Okay, I could sit around and I could complain, oh, market's going down. It's hard to make money. Well, no, I can continue to work on how do I become a better researcher? How can I spot outliers? And I mean, by the time everyone, because the market will be bullish again at some point, when Bitcoin starts pumping again and alts start running, my system will be way more advanced while everyone else is just scrambling. And I've already dialed in my research system. I've already back tested what's been working out. I've already got AI workflows implemented into my business. So you have to understand that periods of downturn are actually an opportunity, because you get to plant the seeds both from a portfolio point of view and a mental point of view and a skill acquisition point of view to be in a much stronger position come the next pump. And that's why I'm still here every day grinding, because, if you look at it in terms of a dollar point of view, like could there be better uses of my time right now than trading or researching or even creating content? Probably. But in terms of the long-term compounding effect of being here every day through good times and bad times, it's hard to put a price on that. So that's why I keep working and I keep getting better and better and better. Okay. Been following you since the Phantom days. Man, those days were crazy. I miss the DeFi days. You wanted to show with me if I stream. I don't really go on other people's channels, to be honest. I wouldn't say I'm like that introverted, but I'm a little bit introverted. I barely even do these Q&As, but I'm like, I actually want to start doing them again. Because I used to live stream every day. Like if you watch me on Banter back in the day, I used to live stream pretty much every day. And I stopped doing it. But I'd like to do this. Maybe we could do it fortnight. I don't want to commit to anything yet, but maybe fortnightly or something. And I do this in my Discord Q&As as well. Yeah, so Lewis, you're talking about selling Bitcoin. Yeah, if you sold Bitcoin at 110, that's great. You can buy back in lower. You can wait for strength as well. You're not forced to position. I mean, don't get me wrong. As I said in my channel, I was a net seller of 108 and I was a net seller of 116. And I've sold pretty much every pump on the lower time frame. But I've used those sales to reaccumulate long-term stack. So it's more shifting short-term into long-term. That's basically the bottom line. What are other coins you're monitoring in the privacy sector? Great question. So Canton Network's one of them, but it needs to settle. I'm also thinking of privacy long-term. So this is something that I continue to research. I continue to dive into because I think this is a really interesting narrative. But Canton, Starknet, I'm just trading. I don't have a fundamental edge here. Humanity Protocol, I think, is quite interesting. From a technical perspective, it isn't a downtrend. Like if you look at the hourly, so I'm waiting for this to pivot back into an uptrend. If you want to try and where are my tools here? Draw a channel. You can see that it's just in a downtrend. So I'm looking to reposition. If you don't know what Humanity is, it's basically, in many ways, like the better version of WorldCoin. I would potentially look at a swing long if it goes to the lows here at 14.4, back to the mid-range, TP a bit here. If it keeps going, great. Goes back to the highs, TP a bit here, and look to flip back into a long if it breaks out, and look for a reversal trade. Potentially, that could be a strategy. I do like these channels because it gives you a like a pretty clear idea of the trend. And I've got the 50-day MA, which isn't relevant across most time frames, so that's basically the structure right now. But Humanity is interesting. Of course, you could also say, hey, I'm just a long-term investor. Well, if you zoom out, you probably just want to see where things consolidate because the price action's been choppy. Very, very choppy. But I do think fundamentally it's an interesting project. I have a bag longer term, but shorter term is where I would concentrate more liquidity if there's an opportunity. The other privacy coins that I'm looking at, Railgun. I have a position in Rail. I built this at like $2.40. What's it at now? $3.80. So it's doing okay. It's come down a little bit. If we somehow got another retest of this zone, like a 290, I would love to be a buyer here. Being a little bit picky with Rail because I don't think it's I mean it's technically an uptrend, but I don't think it's solidified itself. It's not like ZEC that's been around for years, but there is actual traction happening on chain. So the metrics look good, price looks good, but I'm buying in the middle of a range, and I'm not convinced like it's a long-term investment for me. So I have to kind of pivot off more key high time frame levels. So my last ad was at 240. Whether I add again really depends on whether I get a technical setup I like. That's the only reason why. NVIDIA Esports Wednesday. So I don't know if it'll give a crypto narrative, but something to look at. Time to sell everything, GG. I personally don't think so. I think that's capitulation at this point. But I mean, that just shows you're a short-term trader. Because if you have long-term positions, I don't see what the reason to capitulate here would be. If you have conviction in the stuff you're holding. If not, that's a different story. You should never hold stuff you don't have conviction in. The weekly's horrible. Yeah, but I agree. Just something to keep in mind. Every horrible weekly candle has been a good buy. Eventually. Obviously, last time we had a horrible weekly candle, we took some time to recover. So it could play out like this. Let me just show you something. Let me do it on a clean chart as well. Let me just clear this chart. I just learned how to do this the other day, so let me see if I can remember. Here we go. This fractal. So Bitcoin puts in these similar fractals when it bottoms. It usually has a nasty weekly. So like this weekly was fucked in 24. Then it usually comes back up and bleeds again. So we've had a fucked weekly. I think what's going to happen is we're going to come back up and then bleed again before there's a reversal. Now, how far it bleeds depends. But something like this would make sense in my opinion. To me, this looks correct. Obviously, fractals are fractals. They're a bit of a meme, but this is what Bitcoin's been doing in the past. Many, many times in the past. And this is how bottoms are created. They usually aren't a wick down and then a wick up. Like pretty much every time we've had one of these nasty wicks, we have taken time to consolidate after. So I don't think it's going to be a V reverse like this. I think it's going to take a bit of time, but then I think eventually we reverse. Something like this. Why no one talks about Dash? I guess it's not as aligned with the narrative, but in terms of PA, it's strong. But I mean, I think, the reason Zex, like the Winklevoss twins are talking about it, privacy's now become a big narrative. The time before then and now is different. It held to 50 MA. I agree. But charting Bitcoin on a 50 MA is a little bit simplistic in my opinion. I removed my indicators. I'll just add them back later. I accidentally clicked that. Charting the Bitcoin on a 50 MA is a little bit simplistic in my opinion. I think I'll just quickly add them back. The market is driven by macro. Bitcoin is a macro asset. So the 50 MA looks cool, but it's just a moving average. And at the end of the day, A, macro drives the market. B, structural supply and demand zones. I mean, that is what drives markets. We know there's demand in here. We know there's demand because in the past, you can see it. I'll see if I can get some, I've got some great traders in my group that are much better at this stuff than me. They go through like delta and demand. You can see on the order books that there's demand in that zone as well. That is more important to me than breaking a moving average. So you have to keep in mind that markets are all about supply and demand. There's obviously been a lot of supply in this zone, which formed a top, but there is demand in this zone. So we need to see a reaction. How Bitcoin reacts over the next few days will tell you a lot. Not once has it pierced the 50 MA and then bounced up for a bull market. Yes, you are correct. I mean, technically, we didn't close below. We technically haven't closed below now either, but yes, we're not going to whipsaw up this morning. However, this is a sample size of 2 cycles. 1, 2. This 50 MA is irrelevant on the weekly in the first cycle. Okay, I'll count it for you. I'll say, I mean, this was a very different market back then, but anyway, 1, 2, 3. That's, I mean, in science, imagine doing a study with, rats or whatever, and saying, and doing it 3 times and being like, okay, it's conclusive. I don't like that thinking because I think it's a little bit, I mean, these things are good. I'm not a huge bull either. I'm not saying we have to go up. Like, there's a chance it's over. There's definitely a material chance, maybe 35, 40% in my opinion. But from a 1 to 2 year perspective, it's hard to see equities not going higher. It's hard to see the monetary regime shifting, and Bitcoin is a liquidity sponge. For me, that takes precedent over something with a sample size of 3. And I think recently on the channel, we've been quite level-headed. This is actually the first time that I've bought Bitcoin. Throughout all the other moves, I was saying, don't buy yet, be patient. Don't buy yet, be patient. Don't buy yet, be patient. So I feel like I've done my best to protect the audience. Like, I said the crypto crash wasn't over 11 days ago. I said in this video that you need to be careful. I said in this video that, the market's broken. We said in this video that Bitcoin rejected to be careful. And that was only 2 days ago that I finally flipped and said, look, I'm starting to buy now. I'm not rushing into alts, but I'm buying some long-term Bitcoin. So, yeah. So like I've been saying, buy all the way down. But anyone that watches the daily shows knows that. And I always say in the videos to have an invalidation if you are going to buy. I don't have an invalidation on my long-term Bitcoin because I have a technical invalidation, that is. Obviously, if something fundamentally went wrong, I would potentially invalidate, but I'm holding Bitcoin for 10 years plus. It's not something that I want to sell. But in the short term, if we did start to lose this level at 90K and we reacted weekly and the macro picture started to shift, I could invalidate short term, like my most recent ads. That I'm open to. So 2 different positions. And that's why I said you always have to split your portfolio, like, and it can be 50-50, but I like 80-20. It can be 70-30 of long-term versus short-term. So you clearly know what's a long-term position and what's a short to mid-term position. Should we focus on cash flow back to buy cryptos? Most people have loose stable coins. I mean, if your question is, should you focus on earning cash flow? Always. I mean, it's no secret, and I talk a lot about this on my other channels as well, that developing a strong income, developing cash flow, leveraging AI to build cash flow generating businesses, these are all ways that you can accumulate more assets that you want, and crypto falls into that category. So, and I've actually said this publicly before, I think if you have less than a few $1,000s in crypto, the best thing for you to do is slowly try and develop an edge in crypto, but also focus on other ways that you can increase your capital base so you're less reliant on markets, because it's never a good place to be where you're like, and this is where bad emotional decisions are often made, where you're fully reliant on a market to generate returns. You should be more reliant on income to generate returns, and then you're using a market, a public market, should be to compound returns. So that is the mindset to have. Income is your leverage, your skill sets in life, your skills, and your businesses. And even if you work for someone, that's still a business, right? You're just part of a broader business. This is your leverage that you can then use to invest into markets to compound your wealth, and then you can actually reinvest back into your business, reinvest back into your skills to level up and get better and better and better. That's why I'm so focused on AI, because I also think that through my own business, I can make my content more efficient. I can make my investing more efficient. I can make my research more efficient, and I can make my daily operations more efficient in order for me to produce more income so I can buy more assets and accumulate more assets. That's the playbook. I mean, it's not complex, but I think sometimes it's good to simplify it like that and understand that in markets, we're trying to use the long-term, we're trying to use income generation to play long-term games. I think when you become too reliant on like flipping a meme or like, trading a coin to make money, you put yourself in a difficult position. It's definitely possible. I know full-time traders that do it, but I wouldn't want to be one of those people, because, and I've never wanted to be a full-time trader for this reason. You put too much pressure on it. It's too much pressure. It means you have emotional decisions a lot of the time because you're reliant on that income. I think this is Smiley. I'm just reading off the what's it called? Profile picture. 50K per Bitcoin seems like a fair price. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, bro. A bit of water to go under the bridge until then, but I would be buying at 50K, that's for sure. I still think the longer term macro setup for Bitcoin is strong. Like, if you really zoom out, like, I know we all love short-term price action and we chart and, we like the cycles and whatever, but if you really zoom out and think longer term, there's a massive like AI race at the moment. And the race is basically who can acquire more energy. Now, right now, China has double the amount of energy than the US. Energy, by the way, is actually the thing that's holding AI back. There's actually GPUs that aren't being utilized. It's not the chips right now that are limiting AI anymore. It was at one point. It's actually the energy to power them. So there's a big AI race at the moment. Bitcoin is energy in a way. Like, it's not energy itself, but it's the only asset proved by energy. You can't fake energy. So, I mean, you can fake fiat currency. So I think heading into this new economy, this AI economy, which is essentially an energy economy, Bitcoin has a very unique position, because not only does it benefit from that as a narrative, it also benefits from the fact that it is a debasement trade at the same time. And we've seen the US monetary policy and other central banks as well. They need to debase in order to fund this AI arms race. And Bitcoin becomes a very interesting cog in that equation. Of course, any risk asset technically, but specifically Bitcoin, because Bitcoin and gold are assets that should theoretically react well to currency debasement. And I know Bitcoin, like I admit, Bitcoin isn't digital gold yet. Like it's a tech stock, it's a levered tech stock, and that's how it trades. But it's still very sensitive to liquidity. And right now, we've seen liquidity tighten. We had the US government shut down. We've seen a bit of a slowdown towards the end of the year. There's a bit of pressure on whether we're going to have a rate cut. There is a reason why Bitcoin has front run the equity sell-off, but it can also go the other way. Once we start seeing liquidity repos come back into the market, once we start seeing, reverse repos, once we start, potentially if we see a rate cut and the fortunes of that side of things switches as well, it can be also repriced into the market. And that's where I think you get the next run for equities. Lewis says, I feel like trying to get into Zcash now is like playing chicken with a freight train. How much more upside is there? It could drop hard soon. Yeah, first thing is work out, are you bullish long-term or short-term? Clearly you're on the fence. If you're on the fence, you don't need to force a trade. Like you can just get on big dips. I even waited. Like I missed this original run-up and I was fucking annoyed. And then I just waited for a big dip and I longed the dip. That was my playbook on it. Every bear market starts with a huge liquidation crash. October 10th was it. Bull market is over. Deal with it. I disagree from a macro perspective because Bitcoin is a macro asset. So I said this on the show the other day. I'll say it again because I think this is also a new audience because we have some ex people as well. Crypto doesn't operate in a vacuum. You have the global macro landscape. Then you have yields, rates, how that impacts markets. Then you have risk assets and how they react. And obviously you have metals and commodities, etc. as well. Then you have Bitcoin as your macro asset, like essentially a levered tech stock. And then you have altcoins, which are detached from the market and are more based on liquidity flows now. So no one ever claimed that alts were going to go up all at once. It's been a different market for a long time. We'll accept that. But on the Bitcoin side of things, and obviously major alts, which should see some liquidity flow if Bitcoin does well, because it's operating in this economy, it's not in a vacuum. So a liquidation, so your point here, Elvis, like about a liquidation event triggering the bear market, this is a much bigger thing. 2022, yes, there were things like the FTX and the liquidations and Luna, which made the crash worse. But remember, the shift from risk into risk off in equities was ultimately what drove it. And the fact that we were in an easing environment and we entered a tightening environment. That is what drives markets. There is a reason why the S&P topped in December 21. Bitcoin also topped in November 21. Then it bled. It made a low in October 22. FTX happened here, but Bitcoin also put a low in 22. And then it's been up ever since. Bitcoin's been tracking this is the S&P, but it's been tracking the NASDAQ and the S&P. It wasn't a liquidation event which triggered the last Bitcoin bear market. It accelerated it, but it was the macro landscape which triggered the bear market. So in order to understand where Bitcoin's going to go, you have to ask yourself, where is macro going to go? And I still think from a long-term perspective, there's evidence to suggest we'll see markets higher. I'm not saying it's early stage, not saying the risk reward on equities right now is brilliant from a cycle point of view, but I still think there'll be another leg based on this. And that's how I think of markets. And then altcoins are a separate conversation because they are reflective to Bitcoin. They rely on their own catalysts. They rely on their own flows, all the stuff we've been talking about on the channel. And that's where you need to be a little bit more picky and selective. I mean, as I said, long-term, short-term, you can maybe hold a couple of things long-term that you're bullish on structurally and then trade with a smaller portion of your portfolio or get into narrative trading, that kind of stuff. Depends where you have an edge. I like doing that. It keeps me sharp, and that's where my biggest outsized opportunities have been. But if yours is on, playing long continuation on majors, play long continuation on majors. I have long-term conviction on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the king. Same. And if Bitcoin goes up, there will be plenty of room for speculation on other things at certain periods as well. Like I'm also bullish broadly I'm bullish on Bitcoin. I'm bullish on blockchain as well. I mean, we are seeing, blockchain is, like it or not, it's a thing. I mean, big institutions are now getting involved. We're seeing record numbers of RWAs on chain. I know prices aren't going up. So I know there's this feeling to like, fuck, alts are down. Like this is like a crazy bear market for crypto. Crypto's dead. You can't think in terms of crypto in terms of price. Crypto is a tech class. Blockchain is a tech class, and the assets, are representative of it, but they don't make up the entire industry. The industry is based on what the infrastructure, the financial infrastructure that's being built. I'm incredibly bullish on that. And then because of that, and because of the traction on that and the adoption on that, you will see some altcoins outperforming. That's the way it's going to be. I'm bullish on blockchain. and are bullish on Bitcoin, and thus during periods, and I will be bullish on specific altcoins. That's the way to play the game. Is this dip any different than others this cycle? Yeah, it's different than others in the sense that we've seen a breakdown of the 50-day moving average. I don't think that's something to discount. We've seen, I mean, what's happening now, by the way, guys, is it's a DAT hangover. So it's market exhaustion. The market's hungover. The market's exhausted. It needs time to recover. And equity, it obviously front ran the equities drawdown a little bit. If equities have weakness into end of Q4, start of Q1, I think crypto's largely front run the majority of that. And then I think it will be based on whether the business cycle continues or not, as to whether Bitcoin continues to push for a new high. And I think that will also continue. So yes, you should be cautious. Of course, when you break a key level, you should always be cautious. But at the same time, I would be following the macro cycle. The beef says macro is pointing to more liquidity and lower rates plus clarity in the short term. We can go, yeah, of course. I think we go lower on equities, balance probabilities in the next couple of months. But I think crypto's front run a lot of that. And I think at some point we see the market recovering because there are still reasons to be bullish on the macro side. How can you do high frequency trading? That's not something I do. To be honest with you, that's not my game. Massive disparity in terms of demand versus supply of tokens. Yeah, and this is the issue with altcoins. Like a lot of the valuations on alts, just to be frank, are still too high. Like tens of billions, 100 billion, like, crazy numbers, or billions, hundreds of millions. Like a lot of these are still too high because market cap and liquidity are very different things. And this is what we saw on October 10th, right? The market caps of some tokens were very high, but they also went down large amounts because they're not very liquid as assets. So you have to separate the liquidity of an asset versus the market cap of an asset. And that's why the market caps on alts are a bit fugazi to begin with. So you can see, prices reflexively move crazy both ways. You can see them go a lot higher than you ever thought they would go in a bull run, and you could see them go a lot lower in bearish periods than you ever thought they would go as well. That's why it's risky to hold big bloated altcoin portfolios, and it has been the majority of this year. Better to have a few high conviction things that you're happy to hold and narrative trade the rest if you want to get involved. That's the playbook right now, and splitting that barbell based on how risk on or risk off you are based on the current environment. AI bots. I'm not trading with AI bots, but I do a lot of back testing. And then I will back test on the high time frames to take discretionary enters. I still back my own ability to discretionarily, if that's a word, I think it is, come up with trades, ideate and execute trades than I do to rely on an AI bot. But I will use them to back test. That's where I'm at. But I think, don't get me wrong, there'll probably be a point in the very near future where AI starts to supersede your own abilities as well. Is it possible for this cycle to end in extreme fear? It's possible. It's possible, but it would be an anomaly. It would be the first cycle to end without a proper blow off top. Let's actually look at fear and greed. Do you see a bouncer to the weekly close? Yeah, we have one day. I think I do. I think I do. But fuck off. I think I do, but I'm not going to be trading it basically. And to trade it, we would need to be on the 30-minute H1 on Bitcoin. Yeah, potentially on H1. Actually, there's a setup here. So you see how we're actually respecting the doodle on the way down, and I don't really use the 50 AMA on an H. Not 50 AMA, 50. This is an AMA, 50 moving average on the H1. You would want to see it get back above, accept above, and then potentially look at a long into maybe even Monday. But that would be a reversal. Right now we're flirting with lower lows, so that's the reversal setup if we get it. But yeah, there is some adherence there, and I wonder what the 30 minutes saying. Also, pretty similar chart. Also, a little bit less reliable than H1, but also seeing some reaction to that zone as well. This is the indicator that we have in my MHC community that we use for trading. Better wish for no bounce because I will just create a CME gap and eventually do a typical retrace to lower low. Yeah, potentially, but I think all of this is noise in the short term. This is an interesting thought experiment. Think of it this way, guys. We're nearing a day where you can click a button and run your own blockchain in an instant on some phone app, essentially, or just an AI tool. L1s are literally the most overvalued things of all time. Yeah, I think there was a major shift into infrastructure layers. I think there'll be a shift, and the crypto community's been talking about this for quite some time, but out of like infra and into apps. And we've seen that. App chains are huge now. Hyperliquid, Layer 1 is an app chain. Huge success. And I think this is the future. I think a lot of the top apps, they want more control, they want more sovereignty, they want more flexibility, they want governance, and they're gonna be app chains. So yeah, I agree. Like infrastructure L1s, there's just too many coins. There's just way too many coins. So better to focus on the apps with PMF. Thank you for the props. No worries. Psychopath. Concentrated pockets of Bitcoin OG whales are redistributing into new hands. It's healthy and needs to happen. 100%. And it's funny that the OG whales are selling to the institutions. Like this is one of the first times in history we've seen this. And it's funny because, in the early days, people would say, oh, we're going to sell, on the suits, and that's actually what's happening. These OGs have been in Bitcoin for a long time. They've ridden the price up and now they're selling on the suits, and fair play to them. And the next leg now will be less of a retail leg and more of an institutional leg. Just looking through some questions. So it's the narrative of Zcash is the original narrative of the internet of Bitcoin. It's cyberpunk. I think you're saying you meant cypherpunk. Cypherpunk? Yeah. Cypherpunk philosophy. Yeah. Well, kind of, yeah. And Satoshi also said in 2010 that he thought there might be a better way. And it is a better way, but it's also, narrative driven as well. It's not just, I was seeing a bit of a reaction here on Bitcoin, by the way. It's not just, the tech suddenly got amazing overnight, but there has been an increase in the amount of ZEC in the pools. What are the best L1s? I still think Solana has a strong developer ecosystem. I remember buying, some of you might remember, Solana at $11, $12. Obviously, I've sold some quite a bit on the way up, but I'd be interested at re-entering down here on Sol. This is like a full range. This is a huge range on Sol. Very painful if you're a holder because it just chops and gets you excited, lets you down, gets you excited, lets you down, gets you excited, lets you down. $1.20, I think, is a very interesting potential DCA zone on Sol. So I think we actually might get this, and that's interesting. I also like Sui. Like if I had to pick another L1, I think Sui is one of the more interesting ones. The only thing is it broke down below a key level on the weekly. For me, I don't like this. I know Raoul Pal has his like logarithmic channel or whatever. I'm just looking at demand zones, and $2 was a structural level that we lost. So maybe I would need to see a reversal play if we got one. Doesn't look like we'll get one now, but that would be the play on Sui. But that just broke down. So potentially you invalidated if you're holding long-term Sui. I'm not in a position right now. Zcash, not technically an L1. Bitcoin Fork, of course. Hyperliquid. There's a lot of demand on Hype. And actually, here's an interesting fun fact for you. If you look at crypto stocks, Hyperliquid, I think it's SON, SONN, Sonnet. This is its DAT. Obviously, they overtake tickers, so it's not actually a biotherapeutical company. It's the Hype DAT. This is actually doing pretty well compared to a lot of other DATs which are down, like MicroStrategy, BNC. Son is actually looking okay. So this shows that there is demand, and I think if the market recovers, Hype will also recover strongly. Aster also looks strong as well. So Hype is, I know it's a DEX, but it's an L1 as well. It's on its own chain. So I would say Hype. Chainlink I like, but it's not an L1. Actually, let's chart Chainlink quickly. Where is my Chainlink chart? I have a good chart on Chainlink. No. Let me try and get my proper Chainlink chart. I think it's Coinbase. Yeah. We're coming down to a potential bid zone now. So this is on the log chart, but it makes sense considering it's, charted on the high time frame here. Every time we've bounced at the bottom of this channel, we've had a pretty good reaction on Link. So looking for another reaction soon. I might DCA some in this zone. I TP'd into this zone on the lower high, and then I had an inval on the breakdown, looking to potentially re-enter. So that's one that I'm watching. Scrolling down the list here. Monero, I don't think the Monero narrative is as strong as Zcash, just because it's obfuscation, which I think, it's always had a bit of a kind of dark money narrative. Zek seems a bit lighter and maybe a bit more friendly. Scrolling down the list further, Canton, new token, wait to see where it settles. Mantle's interesting because I think when the market comes back, Mantle and Bybit, the exchange tokens, will do well. So there's actually a bid level on Mantle. It's coming into this zone. I want to see like a reaction. So, we might even see a break below and then you can get in on a reclaim. Potentially looking at DCAing a little bit here. Tau going into the halving soon, but has sold off a lot. I feel like it's almost pre-sold. The issue with Tau, and it's kind of like Solana, it's just like in a chop range. So, okay, sorry if you're really bullish on Tau, but range low would be where I look at entering. You got to remember, in a market like this, you really do one of two things. Either you just buy and hold for long term, or you get greedy. And greedy is you either wait and pay for confirmation of reclaims, or you wait and you buy into structural demand zones on the high time frames where you have a invalidation. That is basically the way to play a market like this. Near protocol, once again, in the middle of a range, as we discussed before, but has some crossover into the privacy narrative. But the issue with Near is it just got rejected. So $1.80 would be your demand zone. We might get back down there. There could be a couple pretty interesting bid zones soon. Now, I'm not saying this is blind bullish hopium, but alts, alts aren't doing now. I know alts are shit. I'm aware, but they aren't doing as bad as they could have been. What do I mean by that? Like dominance, overall, it hasn't really spiked massively considering the carnage this week. Like the weekly dominance chart is actually down. So Bitcoin has sold off just as bad as a lot of alts this week. Now I know dominance has been climbing, so there's been a slow bleed on alts over the past couple of months. So I'm not saying there hasn't been pain. There has. All of this has been pain. But the last couple of weeks, alts held up okay. I think October 10th flushed out a lot of the sellers on alts. I don't know. Obviously, there's still sellers, but there's not. What I'm trying to say is the majority of sellers on a lot of alts have been flushed out. Obviously, there's still perp shorting though, right? So this is short alts, long Bitcoin. There's all these sort of pair trades people do, which suppress prices on alts. Going down the list a little bit, Athena I like, but once again would wait for strength. Pump, I'm getting asked a lot about Pump. I think it's a good coin. I just don't have the conviction to buy here. It also broke down, so probably on the daily you want to use for 0.004 as a pivot point potentially. Trump, no. Filecoin had a crazy pump one day. It's now down 30%. It's insane. A lot of these coins had scam pumps. So like, perps, basically price would manipulate upwards on perps, then slam down. Starknet up a lot. We talked about going earlier in the video if you want my analysis on that. how you can potentially play the rally-based rally setup on the hourly. Let's do a bit of a sneak peek through the Discord, see if there's any alpha from Fabian. Couple of things. I actually asked him about Believe. I want to see his take in his question channel. Basically, in the Miles High Club, you can ask questions to all of the analysts, including myself. It's the only place you can ask questions at any time, and I answer every day. So Fabian says, I asked him basically, should we buy the blood on Believe? Because Believe just keeps going down because Pasternak keeps fucking around. This coin, launch coin. It just goes down and down and down. So I said, should we buy it? It's not a good buy to catch a knife. He says they might be pivoting away from ICM. Believe member basically confirmed it. Pasternak recently deleted all his tweets. Not official info on the new direction yet, but seems to be a prediction market based and was only decided after Flywheel announcement flopped. So the way I'm thinking about it is that we're less likely to see progress made in the existing platform. An extra reveal could be a while out. But when it does eventually come out, we get an announcement pump, and from there it will depend on the details of it. That's a pretty good analysis. Fabian's a fucking smart guy. Very, very, very smart guy. One thing I'm also doing, this is completely separate, but Fabian and I talked a lot about it, so I thought I'd bring it up, is starting to DCA a bit more into Chinese equities. Really like, because I'm a DCAer. Obviously not financial advice, but I think, this is my macro thesis, I think, and they're cooling off a bit now, which is good, Chinese equities have more upside than US over the next 5 years, in my opinion. PE's price-to-share ratios are at 11. Compare that to the US, like the NASDAQ, they're at 21 to 22. So half the price-to-share ratios as the NASDAQ. So for me, and it's also still like 50% off their 2021 highs, but also obviously overinflated. To me, I think China's winning the AI race. Very decent chance that they win. Even Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, he pointed this out. And I want exposure to that. So there are a couple of tail risks to keep in mind. Taiwan, one of them. If there was geopolitical tensions, does like US delist, or is there like economic warfare? I don't think this is something to worry about in the next 2 years, but I think longer term, it's definitely a reason why share prices are more suppressed. A few other reasons as well. But I think I kind of think of China as like altcoins. Towards the end of the business cycle, whenever you think that is, once you think equities have put in their top, US equities come to their top, the market will move further down the risk curve. It will look to speculate on asset classes and indexes and nations, for that matter, that it thinks are undervalued. That's typically how cycles end. You move down the risk curve from large caps to low caps, and I think that's the period where US equities put in the top. Then you see China make a big run, and then things get shaky as you have that last big correction. So that's how I think the rotation could play out. So for a multi-year hold, I think this is a decent DCA zone in my opinion. Just Chinese ingrained bias, yeah. Look, China has double the energy than the US. I'm not biased on any side, but I want exposure to it. I'm just an investor. I just invest where I see the trends, and long-term investing is a lot easier because the long-term trends, Bitcoin's pumping, by the way. Yeah, I know going from 94 to 96 is not a pump anymore, but at least it's making a move. But yeah, positioning in long-term trends is actually easier than short-term. And that's, I think, why the Bitcoin trade's still so obvious with the AI play, with the energy play, with the debasement trade. And I think China's also an obvious one, longer term. Obviously, in the short term, it can come down more, but I'm just DCAing it. That's the way to play it. Your analysis is deep as hell. Thank you. I try. I read a lot. I do a lot of. I use AI a lot. I go through. I prompt AI for hours every day. I'm constantly just researching. One thing that's also helped me a lot with my own knowledge base is just writing. I write my thesis. Even in the Discord the other day, when I was thinking about the China trade, where was this? I just basically commented in Fabian's channel, and I gave my points, and then we talked about them. So I just gave my Gave my dot points here. Some of the reasons I was bullish. I shared my analysis that I was doing on Grok. I was asking a bunch of questions. I was even voice messaging Grok. I do that all the time, ChatGPT as well. And then we were discussing it. So I think one good thing is research, question it, get AI to pick holes in it, refine, and then send it to other researchers you trust, get them to review, pick holes in it. And that's what you can do with many different theses. And that's how you can develop these kind of mental models and help your bias. Consuming a lot of content as well, picking holes in it. Look, macro is not an easy game. I think long term it's a bit easier because things generally go up and to the right, and that has to be the assumption. Short term things become a little bit more game theory esque. So I'm trying over time, and I'm continuously doing this to shift more focus but less capital into short term games. What does that mean? To extract an edge short term, you need to focus more time on it. The long term edge, you don't need as much time because the trends are clearer, but you need more capital. So 80% of my time goes into managing the 20% of my portfolio that's risk on. 80% of my portfolio that's more risk off or long term is doesn't require as much energy, only requires 20% energy. So it's that Pareto principle inverse for time spend versus allocation spend that I think is also a good protocol to live by in terms of investing. You don't believe in zero. Oh, so you don't believe in believe. You think it's going to zero? Yeah, maybe. Someone asked, do you think believe is a good buy here? Evelyn Hart has too many Birkins. Yeah, she keeps posting videos of Ben Pasternak on holiday. It's crazy. Miles, let's talk about anyone. I don't have a strong opinion on it now. It was a token I was in 2024. It was very strong. I remember the team being good. It had strong creators behind it, but not one I'm in at the moment. So, yeah, I was bullish then. I don't know that much about the latest developments, so I'm just being perfectly honest. What are your thoughts on ADA into 2026? I think I just haven't really seen the adoption, and it's been like this for a while. So, I mean, it's obviously an OG asset, but for me, it's hard. Like when I just don't see traction, it's hard to underpin a thesis. And my thesis is usually, start with fundamentals, and then obviously that affects price. I will send a message to the team if you had an issue with MHC. I will actually screenshot this for you right now. And before I forget, I'm going to send this to my team. There you go. What are the best robotics coins worth monitoring? The issue with robotics, so X Machina is launching soon. I think that could be interesting depending on where it launches. Peak, I think is still a good one because they're a very serious team. Virtual is more agents. The overall issue with robotics, Kodak I like, probably is one of the leaders. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, the issue is a lot of these just are LARPing as robotics. Geode and AVICI are legit. I would say these three plus Kodak could build out a nice little portfolio, but it might be something you want to wait for the narrative to come back, because I think longer term it's a big narrative, but the problem is it's not fundamentally driven like privacy. So I mean, yeah, for sure, if you want, build a portfolio, but you might just have to be really patient with it, basically. A lot of the rest of the coins are robotics LARP coins, though. Love me some Link. Link is a good coin. It'll come back, and it's something at the bottom of that channel, I'd be interested in buying a bit. What do you think of SPX long term? If you're talking about the meme, I'm not sure. I think there's an interesting narrative. I think if retail comes back, it can do well, but the issue is because it's like a very retail coin, and you can claim it's bots or whatever, could be, but there's lots of talk about it. Issue is like it's just the psychological levels are $1, $2. It lost $1. Where does it go next? It's chopping. It's not really something I'm interested in being in. You want to get into trading crypto full time, make a living off it. Do you think the Mars High Club is essential investment in that? Well, instead of talking about it, because I'm biased, I think it's a great group, but I'll just show you what we have on the trader front. And then you can make a decision. The first thing that we have is a traders hub. So we have a trading school. We have all the modules in terms of setting up exchanges, volume and liquidity, support and resistance, leverage, order types, and everything. We have exercises for you to complete as well with our analysts. We have a trading talk channel for you to meet other analysts. Super high end community as well. Not many like shit traders. It's a high ticket group. So you have a lot of serious traders talking in here every single day. Then we have our alerts. So we have custom alerts for the noodle, which is the indicator that Paradise bases his system off. This can help you spot new opportunities. These are bot alerts. Then we have our indicators section, which have all of our indicators and lessons on how to use them. These are our custom indicators and standard oscillator indicators. And then we have our analysts. And I think this is where we shine versus other groups on the trading front. Our analysts obviously have their channels. They post their trades, but it's not just a signals group. I think the difference between MHC and other groups, and you can see it here, is that the traders are genuinely active in helping others. We have questions channels for all of us. So me and Fabian on the fundamental side, Paradise, Morin on the trading side, and Surf and Doc, we all have questions channels and we answer pretty much every question, which like even the other groups, and I'm not going to name names and shit on other groups, the other groups don't have this, like many of them. Like you can't actually ask their analyst questions. Obviously, it takes us more time. Sometimes it's, difficult. We're trying to manage our portfolios and everyone's asking questions, but we answer and we spend a lot of time on this. You can see Doc as well. He has his analysis channel, trade setup channel, but he also has his question channel where he answers questions. So I think this is the biggest thing, how interactive it is. Surf is more low time frame. So he does all the low time frame setups. If you're interested in intraday, he answers all these questions as well. And I think what's really cool about it is we have all of the events. So we have the live tutorials for you to solidify your knowledge and build your strategy. So we have live charting with Paradise. He does trend trading, market outlook with Fabian. He's macro and alpha. Me, I'm fundamentals. Surf comes in here with market outlook. So he does chart requests, lower time frame stuff. And then Morin, high time frame swing, only opens very few high conviction trades. Doc has his charts and education stream, and then Morin again. So yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. Most people that leave the group, because there are complaints, sometimes when people leave, you can read them, they say that there's too much. And that's also a bad thing sometimes. Sometimes too much can be a bad thing, but we went over and above and we've kind of trimmed some stuff and consolidated as time's gone on. But I think we have a comprehensive group. Once again, not trying to tell you that you should or shouldn't join, but you asked. And I think I wanted to just show you what we've got without like doxing everything in the group, obviously, just to give you a broad overview of what we offer on the trading front. So there'll be a link in the description on the YouTube video here if you want to check it out. If people are on X, there's a tag in my bio that tags Mars High Club. You can find it. What airdrops are you currently farming? Yeah, I've got a team still doing the deck stuff, but I don't think we're farming that much else. Kind of feels like apart from like the perp dexes, the airdrop era farming is a tad over, but ICOs seem to be the new wave. So doing anything you can do to build your social capital to get into ICOs, doing anything you can to get into ICOs seems to be, I think, the higher EV strategy in this current market. Thoughts on XPL? No, I've cut the majority. I have a very small position, which I've been trying to cut on every bounce. There's just a tad more. I haven't had a bounce in fucking a week to cut. But no, dog shit trade for me. Hate it. Just happy to cut and run here. However, when this reverses, I think it'll squeeze like a motherfucker. So there will be a point. I'm just letting you know that I will get back in and I will trade this. I was trying to get starting channel for beginners and getting a group going that would pay more. That will pay me for basic knowledge and wisdom of the game. I need to read this again. I was thinking about starting a channel for beginners and getting a group going that would paywall me or paywall in general. But yeah, if you want to create content, go for it. It's plus EV in my opinion. The very worst thing, you get better and you learn and you develop a new skill of presenting and you solidify knowledge. The very best thing, you go viral and you create a business from it. But your question is more about high level info versus noob stuff. Yeah, I agree. There's still a gap in the market in terms of onboarding retail. The only issue you're going to find right now is retail aren't interested because unfortunately they only like coming into the market when things are really shiny. So it might be slow to get off the ground, but I agree. There is still a lack of quality YouTubers, especially making good crypto content. And actually now would be a good time to start because you can learn in a boring market and actually develop a loyal community during a boring market, as we discussed before. Yeah, go for it. 100% go for it. I see Mobile asking, is a strong reason you're not in anyone? No strong reason. I mean, I can chart it for you. I mean, there's a billion altcoins in crypto, and yeah, there's been times where I've held altcoins and then times where I haven't felt like I need to. So, this is just not one that I re-entered. And, I mean, I would just wait for strength on this. It doesn't look particularly better or worse than any other alt. It looks obviously bad, but every alt looks bad. So I think if I did enter this, I would need some sort of uptrend. But I don't have any recent fundamental knowledge of what the changes have been, what the thesis is. I just know it was a solid play last year. How old are you? I'm 25 now. Every year, the number goes up, like everyone else, obviously. But I remember people used to ask me that on Banter, and I'd say I'm 22. A couple of them saying 25 now. The SA contingencies here. Who's here? What's up with Avalanche? Yeah, it hasn't been trading that well, just like every coin, basically. I mean, that's AVAX BTC, which tells you some of the story, but AVAX USDT. Yeah, breaking down. Yeah, I'm not in this, not trading it, not interested. Yeah, is what it is. Quantum says, you were 21 when I started watching you. That's fucking wild. Wow. I can't believe I've been doing this for this long. And I'll keep doing this for years because, I mean, in terms of my brand, I don't even think it's a brand. I'm just sharing what I'm doing. And as long as I have a platform, I'm just going to keep sharing what I'm doing. And if it's macro, it's macro. If it's AI, it's AI. If it's altcoins, it's altcoins. And that's how it's been since the early days. Yeah, Morpheus, I need to get rid of your moderator handle because it's going to seem like you still work here. Maybe Richard, you can tweak that in the back end. Okay. Allstate, you just joined. Want to buy Bitcoin for the long term. Do you recommend starting to buy some now or waiting to avoid catching a falling knife? What's a good sign that Bitcoin has bottomed? Yeah, if you want to buy Bitcoin for the long term, then honestly, I'll simplify it for you. Whenever there's a period of extreme fear, just add some Bitcoin. I don't think you need to complicate it too much. I think chopping yourself in and out can be tricky. But in terms of a good sign Bitcoin's bottomed, instead of looking at price action right now, I would be looking at the triggers that have caused the reflexivity to the downside coming back again, aka what's the reason that we dumped? Well, it's OG whales selling and DATs selling, and DATs the DAT trade unwinding. So a sign that the market could be reversing, instead of just looking at price, are DAT nabs going up, whales slowing down their pace of selling or less whales selling, retail flows from the ETF starting to neutralize or go green again. Those would be the fundamental triggers. Obviously, that'll result in price going up. But if you want to work out when it's bottomed, instead of just charting, and a lot of TA guys will draw lines, be like, oh, it's going to bottom here, it's going to sweep here and do this and then bottom here. Like the better thing to do is look at the structure from the perspective of the catalysts that have triggered prior pumps and dips. And those are the factors that are, the DATs ETFs and OG whales, how they're reacting is going to form a Bitcoin bottom. So if they keep their current behavior, Bitcoin will keep going lower. If they switch their behavior, then, and their behavior switch could be triggered by a macro shift. That's why you got to pay attention to macro, because if there's a shift, you can front run this. That will eventually cause Bitcoin to bottom. You think it's good to DCA right now? I mean, I DCA'd into some Bitcoin on Friday. Also took some swing longs. So yeah, I think it's a good time, but that's because I just want to hold long term and I want to add to my stack. And I think the business cycle's not over and I want to buy Bitcoin, but it could go lower. But so the question, you know, do you think it's good to DCA? Depends on your time horizon. What narrative do you think is best for DCA right now? I would stick probably to the majors still. Like anything that you think is going to be around in a year, start long term and then go lower time frame. I said this earlier in the video. Like you typically want to move down the risk curve once the trend reverses. So instead of catching a falling knife on random alts, wait for the reversal on Bitcoin, then start moving down the risk curve. So start with buying Bitcoin and safer assets, and then move down the risk curve into riskier stuff. In terms of narratives that when I move down the risk curve, what could they be? I think privacy is one of them. AI is another one. RWA and tokenization is another. And then you've got, you know, all sorts of sub narratives, prediction markets, robotics, etc., on-chain stuff. I think right now, privacy and neobanks, tokenization, seem to be the strongest. But once again, don't need to go down the risk curve too much at the current base in time. You golf? No, I don't. I play tennis though. What's your read on momentum? Momentum's solid. It's just like fundamentally it's solid. But it's like a lot of other alts where it's suffering from just the overall market. So it's in a downtrend. You want to wait for a reversal. So I think it's just it's a waiting game. Like if you go into the hourly, you can see the chart clearly. So it's really just it's a waiting game. It's just a downtrend. That's all. So yeah, basically just play the trend. I'm getting a lot of questions. Can we buy SUI? No, it just broke down, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying, you know, if you want to stack long-term, stack long-term. I just don't like buying after a major inval. At what price is your long bias wrong? It won't be a price trigger for Bitcoin. It'll be a macro trigger. Some very clear sign that something's broken in the economy because, as I said, Bitcoin doesn't operate in a vacuum. So that would be, and I'm not just trading it based on price, long-term. So yeah. It's not really a price thing. Best on and off ramps and trading platform depends on your country. Really depends on your country. Actually, hard to answer that. Trading platform, I use Blowfin for perps. I long across a bunch of stuff. Binance, Bybit, a lot of different stuff. Coinbase, Kraken. You know, there's good off ramps all over the place as well. Just gonna do a final few questions here, and then head off because it's 10:30 p.m. I don't usually stream this late, but I was filming all day, grinding on content. Every Sunday I batch content. Bit of alpha for you guys. It doesn't matter if you're in content, if you work in a particular field or whatever. I love batching on Sundays. Everyone else is like slacking on Sundays. I like just batching a fuck ton of hard work, whatever it is. Because the problem is during the week, you're constantly task hopping, right? And I have like ADHD, so I struggle with it. You're hopping from like admin to content to research to trading. It's like so hard to like constantly switch. On weekends are good because you can say, okay, Sundays are my recording day. And I literally sit down and my only goal is I'm going to record as much as possible. So, and you know, if you're in another job, it could be like, okay, on Sundays, Sunday's my admin day. I'm going to do admin all day. I'm going to do ops all day. Or whatever it is that is high leverage for you, you just do it all day. I loved doing that on Sunday. So it's late. And that's why I kept delaying. It's supposed to be at 5 p.m. I ended up going live at 8:30. Best strategy during a bear market. Continue to accumulate Bitcoin. But you know, wait until a reversal for the majority of alts, I would say. But I don't. It depends how you define bear market, because we can be in a short term bear and then a macro bull at the same time. I don't think. I really don't think this 4-year cycle thing is how it's going to go from now. I mean, Bitcoin is a macro asset when you have multiple big DATs. When you have a Bitcoin ETF, it changes the game versus prior cycles, in my opinion. I'm getting this is crazy. All right, I'm going to do rapid fire to finish this up. I'm getting so many questions. MPC, no bias on it right now. ZBCN, sorry, no opinion on it. Do you still like Curve? I actually prefer yield basis as a play. It's a play on Curve. Where's my yield basis chart? Here it is. Yeah, chart broke down, of course, but keep your eye on this. Keep your eye on this. This is a newer one. Obviously, if you've researched Curve, you'll know that it has a big Curve ecosystem play here. Thoughts on Casper? Not that bullish. Thoughts on AOS? Not that bullish right now, but it was a fucking banger trade for me in 2024. Thoughts on Asta? Very impressed by the relative strength. Fundamentally, still not fully convinced, but relative strength is good. So something I've got to keep my eye on, but I haven't re-entered. Can you agree with me? No one talked about privacy, and suddenly after Zcash run, everyone talks. Look, to be honest, privacy was brewing, but I do agree. But it's not just you know what? It's not just like chicken. Oh, sorry, it's a question of like chicken and egg. So yes, Zcash triggered a lot more people to talk about privacy, but you know what also happened when Zcash pumped? European Union came out with their potential legislation. You saw, UK also. You saw Vitalik and Ethereum Foundation have been going on about privacy. Actually, the reason I would counter this a little bit is because a couple of weeks before Zcash even pumped, I was DCAing into Railgun. I was seeing other privacy coins pumping. So I do agree with you. It definitely put like fuel on the fire, but it was already brewing. It wasn't completely out of nowhere. AVICI, I know a lot of other like creators are talking about this. I missed it. I'm fucking pissed I missed it. But like any coin, it'll come back down. I still don't think there's much follow through in many alts at the moment. So okay, I'm looking at perps. Maybe we need to look at the other chart. So if you miss a coin, I think you're going to get second looks at pretty much everything. Price on AVICI 1 month. Yeah, it ran up to like 5. It's consolidating. I think you can afford to wait on it. Neobanks are a strong narrative, but I don't think there's a rush to get in. Prediction markets, I mean, Polymarket's the play, right? I just don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't have a token. You can airdrop farm it. I just don't know if there's that many like infrastructure plays building, but there could be some smaller ones which launch that could be interesting, but there isn't anything liquid that I'm like super compelled by. Anyway, guys, sorry, I know there's more questions, but we've been here for almost 2 hours, so I got to wrap up. Got to do some stuff before I go to bed. But I wanted to say thank you guys for joining. I don't often do these live streams. It's my first Q&A in a couple of months, I think. I don't really do them much on YouTube. Obviously, we do the Discord ones each week. So yeah, thanks for hanging out. Let's look to do it again as a regular thing. Keep your eye out next Sunday if I decide to do it again. I'll put it up on YouTube ahead of time. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I'm sure most of you are. Link in the description to MHC and all of our stuff as usual if you want to check it out. And just want to thank everyone for hanging out with me on a Sunday. Appreciate your time as well. So I'll be back for a market show either tomorrow or the day after. Most likely tomorrow, but we'll see. And thank you to everyone. You look fresh after a long day. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I put in so much hairspray because I was recording before that. My hair couldn't move if it tried. But I'm honestly exhausted. But I don't know. I guess I'm just wired because I've been recording all day. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. See you later.